Jack Johnson and the Fighting Nerds, what do they have in common? Well, glad that you asked. Jack Johnson is one of the most true and pure fighters that I have ever even heard about. I've only seen him on video, and I've only read about him in books, and I've only heard folklore from Clayton Hires and Jamie Huey. Jack Johnson was fighting at the turn of the century. And Jack Johnson was so tough, he would date a white woman. But back in the 1900s, and I'm talking like 1900s, that was a crime. The Klan was very big back then. And the Klan told Jack Johnson, who Jack come in, he's this black man, and he beat up white guys. And the Klan would tell him before the fights, if you beat up a white man, we're going to kill some of your black brothers. And Jack Johnson told the Klan, then go kill some of my black brothers because I'm going to knock this white man out. And Jack Johnson would date white women, and this just wasn't done. They even arrested him for it. It was a crime to take a white woman, as a black man, you're driving the car, to take a white woman across state lines. And Jack was dating one. I believe he was even married to her. So he'd take her on vacation, whatever. They came and arrested him. Like, it was just this really weird time, and Jack Johnson still did not flinch. He'd go and beat those white guys up. Jack Johnson had a 10-year span where he was not defeated. Now, I want to tie this in with the Fighting Nerds. Bear with me. One of the reasons that Jack Johnson, and the predominant reason that Jack Johnson, aside from his toughness, and aside from his pugilistic skill, aside from the matchmaking, the training, and anything else you want to discuss, the premier reason he was able to go a decade unbeaten as heavyweight champion, and by the way, so did several other guys at that point in time. The reason I maintain that they were able to do that is if you wanted to watch Jack Johnson fight, or you wanted to watch any big fight back then, that meant that you and some buddies were going to huddle around a transistor radio. You were never going to see the fight unless you had a ticket and you were in the building. There was no channel that it was on. There was no closed captioning. There was no pay-per-view. There was no streaming. There was no digital rights. And when a guy's not being watched, and he's a tough guy, and he's got a unique skill set, it's very hard to break down. I mean, you've heard the expression, it takes a village. It takes a village not just to raise a baby. It takes a village to beat a great fighter. So somebody will study, some great trainer with the right eye for it, Clayton Hires to be a fine example, sit down and watch tape, and he'll find something that nobody else has found. And he'll teach that to his athlete. Now, his athlete might go out there, exploit that something, and get the win that night, but he also might fail while exploiting that thing that he found. So now the next guy comes in. The next guy now has an idea of a weakness because it just got exploited, even if it wasn't enough for victory, and he finds something else. Now, all of a sudden, this great fighter's got two things that can be exploited. And sometimes you get these really great guys, and you need 3 and 4 and 5. But then the person that comes in and beats them, though they will take all the credit, and though they will take all the glory, was able to beat them because of those 3 and 4 and 5 guys that came before, and their training camps and their trainers and their great minds that were able to watch and study it. And that's the one thing that the Fighting Nerds brought attention to themselves. The Fighting Nerds, I saw this headline, it made me so mad. Sometimes I see these headlines and I get so mad at the lack of fairness that we have in our industry. It's a very cold business. I'm part of it. But it's a very cold business. The Fighting Nerds become the fighting frauds overnight. And this is all because Kaio and because Rufy went down on the same card. The Fighting Nerds had some crazy record. Daniel Cormier said that they had won 28 straight fights. I think that Daniel misspoke. I don't think it was that many. I thought it was in the teens, and then they had the one loss. But Daniel said this morning when I spoke to him that they had won 28 fights. So at least we can agree they won a whole bunch of fights and they did a really good job. But in the process of that, much like Jack Johnson, eventually that brings attention. And it's not new to sport. You can use it in the NCAA. You could even use it in Olympiad. where somebody will go win 3 or 4 gold medals, and that's insane by today's standards. But if you were to date it back, it wasn't because training was so much different, and it wasn't because the steroids are so much better, and it wasn't because they learned about sleep and or nutrition. This is all talk. None of it's real. It's because nobody watched them. There wasn't any footage. There wasn't any video. It is illegal still to this day in kids football right here in Westland, Oregon. Might be true nationwide. I can just tell you right here in Westland, Oregon, it is illegal to watch another team for scouting purposes. So if you are a competitive coach, you cannot go to the game and take notes. If you are a competitive coach, you cannot film a children's football game. Now, you are allowed to film the game as long as it's not for scouting purposes. So if mom is to record or grandma is to record her own child or grandson, I'm just sharing with you, that's how effective it is. That's how effective video footage is in strategizing, that within some sports within this country, it's illegal. So the nerds did such a great job of bringing attention to themselves, and I'm not down on the nerds. I'm up on them. I'm not down on Kyle Brown. I'm up on him. I'm impressed with what he did. I don't know of anybody, and it may have happened, I'm sharing, I don't know of anybody that had 2 contracts signed simultaneously in the UFC, aside from one guy. I've got to insert myself. I had a contract to fight Rashad Evans and a contract to fight Wanderlei Silva at the same time. I didn't know that was unusual. Frank Trigg did an entire interview and did a piece on me and said that I was the first guy to ever have 2 contracts. Win or lose, in this main event, you're drawing into this main event. Man, I just share with you, that was in 2014. If Frank Trigg was right when he said that I was the first one ever, that would only mean we'd have to date our memory back to 2014. And if it hasn't happened since then that would mean Kyle Barao is the only athlete to have 2 simultaneous contracts. And there was multiple ways to play that. Okay, history says the backup fighter's next fight is for the title. There is only one exception to that. So historically speaking, if you're the backup fighter, you will then go and fight for the title. Now, as recently as 1 week ago, we're getting evidence that there's going to be 2 exceptions to that, because we're told that Sarukian is going to draw into the Hangman. We'll see if that comes to fruition. My point, when Kyle Barao got on the scale and weighed in to fill in for Dricus and or Chimaev, at least in theory, if he would have then pulled out of his fight with Imanov, he would have been a #1 contender. Now, whether he got that fight or not, he would have been in conversation. We know he would be in conversation because people liked him. They liked him enough that they made him the backup fighter. They liked him enough that they put him on top of the bill in a main event on the worldwide leader known as ESPN as recently as 2 days ago. We understand that he had the mandate of the masses, but that's not the route that he took. He agreed to take a bigger risk. He agreed to travel to America, attempt to acclimate, get licensed, beat the scale, ready to compete. Did it happen? Travels to Europe, reacclimates, gets licensed, beat the scale. And there's always going to be talk when the fight is over, and some people are going to say that he was a little thin, that he was pulled in too many different directions at once. That is overwhelmingly going to be the sentiment that holds out. I just don't know anything about it. I grew up in wrestling environments where you took on 4 and 5 and 6 guys in the same day, and you had no idea who was coming first or who was going to be second or who was going to be third or who you'd see in the semis or in the wrestlebacks. You had no idea because it was a straight line bracket. You didn't know if you were going to win. You didn't know if they were going to win. I like the idea of taking on multiple people. I like the idea of short notice. Historically speaking, short notice pays off more times than it bites you in the ass. So I'm not going to go with that for Kyle. Kyle lost a fist fight to Imanov because it turns out that Imanov is better fist fighting than Kyle. It's as simple as that. But as far as having courage, as far as representing his team, as far as saying yes when an opportunity presents itself, as far as putting yourself in an unideal situation, but going out there and competing to the best of your abilities, I got no problem with the fighting nerds, and I damn sure got no problem with what happened with Kyle Brallo.